Ma'am, step back. Now.
You have no idea who you just shot.
You shot my dog.
Now explain your decision.
Officer, do you understand who you just confronted? No, sir.
Then you're about to learn.
The shot cracked through the quiet suburban street, and for one frozen second, nobody moved. The German shepherd collapsed onto the pavement. His leash slipped from the woman's hand as she stared at him in disbelief. Then came another sound, a desperate cry from the dog, that made every neighbor behind their curtains look toward the street. Bruno, she dropped to her knees beside him. Her name was Commander Amara Hayes, but the two officers standing 20 feet away knew nothing about that. To them, she was simply a black woman in a gray hoodie, standing between two patrol cars, apparently refusing to follow instructions during a tense call. Officer Miller kept his weapon pointed downward, but remained defensive. Ma'am, step away from the dog. Amara didn't answer. She pressed both hands against Bruno's side, trying to stop the bleeding. Her breathing became uneven. Her eyes moved from the dog to the officers. Then back to Bruno. You shot him, she whispered. Officer Miller swallowed. He charged my partner. Amara looked up. No. Her voice was quiet. You had time. The second officer, Carter, immediately stepped forward. Ma'am, we gave you multiple commands. Amara slowly shook her head. You gave me 3 seconds. That sentence silenced the street behind her. A neighbor lowered his phone. Another woman standing on her porch covered her mouth. Everyone could feel that something had gone terribly wrong. Amara had spent years learning how to control fear. She had watched people panic under pressure. She had seen soldiers lose everything and still stand their ground. But none of that training prepared her for watching Bruno struggle to breathe. She leaned closer. Stay with me, boy. Bruno's tail moved faintly. That tiny movement broke something inside her. Amara closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them. The tears were still there, but something had changed. The grief remained, the anger had arrived. Officer Carter stepped closer. Ma'am, we need you to come with us for questioning. Amara stared at him. You want to take me away from him. We need to secure the scene. She looked down at Bruno, then at the badge on Carter's chest. You're supposed to protect people. Carter hesitated. Amara continued, her voice trembling but controlled, and sometimes protection means knowing when you were wrong. The officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, don't make this more difficult. Amara slowly stood. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten anyone. She simply looked at the two officers with the kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable because it leaves them alone with their own decisions. Difficult, she said. You shot a family member, and now you're telling me I'm making this difficult. For a moment, nobody spoke. A little boy across the street stepped closer to his mother. Mom, why did the police shoot the dog? His mother pulled him back. Come inside. Amara heard the question. She heard the fear behind it. And suddenly this wasn't only about Bruno anymore. It was about trust. It was about what happens when the people wearing a badge make a decision they cannot take back. It was about every family that expects an officer to arrive and make a dangerous situation safer, not worse. Amara looked directly at Officer Miller. I want your name, Miller. Badge number. He hesitated before giving it. Amara repeated it quietly. Memorizing every detail, Carter scoffed. You planning to file a complaint? Amara looked at him. No. The officer raised an eyebrow. Then watched she glanced down at Bruno. I'm planning to make sure the truth is impossible to bury. That sentence changed the atmosphere. Officer Miller looked at Carter. Carter looked away. Amara carefully placed her hand on Bruno's head. Bruno, you were a good boy. Her voice cracked. She kissed his forehead. Then she stood again, this time. Her face was different. Not reckless, not hysterical. Focused, the kind of focus built through years of discipline. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Officer Carter immediately warned her mom. Don't make any calls right now. Amara looked at him. I'm calling someone who needs to know who. She paused. Then she looked toward the flashing patrol lights. You'll know soon enough. She turned away from the officers and pressed one number. The person on the other end answered almost immediately. Amara said nothing for several seconds. Then, in a voice colder than the night air, she finally spoke. Activate the command channel. She looked back at the officers. And document everything, because sometimes justice doesn't begin with shouting. Sometimes it begins with a calm voice, a painful truth, and one person deciding that what happened would not happen to someone else. The call connected on the first ring. Amara stood alone inside her dark living room, still wearing the same grey hoodie from the street. Through the window, the red and blue police lights were fading into the distance. Her hands were trembling not from fear, from everything she was trying not to feel. She looked down at the phone. Activate the command channel. There was silence on the other end. Then a calm male voice answered. Commander Hayes, confirm your identity. Amara closed her eyes. Commander Amara Hayes. Delta Command. The voice immediately changed. Understood, Commander. Amara looked toward the empty spot near the doorway, where Bruno usually waited for her. He's gone. Another silence. I'm sorry, Commander. She swallowed hard. Don't apologize. Listen, her voice became steady. I want the officers identified. I want their body camera footage preserved. I want the dispatch recording secured. And I want every witness statement documented before anyone has an opportunity to rewrite what happened. Understood. Amara sat down for the first time that night. Her strength cracked. She covered her face. With one hand, a tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away immediately. She had spent years being told that strong people don't break. But strength wasn't the absence of pain. Strength was deciding what to do with that pain. She looked at Bruno's empty food bowl. I don't want revenge against every cop, she said quietly. I want accountability for the ones who forgot what the badge means. The voice on the phone responded carefully. That distinction matters. It matters to me. Amara stood and walked toward the kitchen. On the refrigerator was a photograph of her and Bruno from years earlier. She touched the picture. He trusted people, because I taught him that people could be trusted. Her jaw tightened tonight. Somebody failed him. Then she looked directly into the reflection of herself in the window. And I won't let that failure become someone else's tragedy. The phone remained connected. Commander, do you want... The federal liaison contacted. Amara didn't answer immediately. She knew exactly what that would mean. Attention questions. Pressure and possibly consequences. Far beyond the two officers who had pulled their weapons. No, she finally said. Not yet. She took a breath first. I want the truth. That decision would become one of the most important choices of her life. Because Amara understood something many people forget. When emotions take control, justice without facts can become another form of injustice. She didn't want a mob. She didn't want innocent officers punished. Because of the actions of two people, she wanted evidence, she wanted accountability. And most importantly, she wanted the public to see the difference between a bad decision and an entire profession. She opened her laptop. Within minutes, the first body camera file appeared on her screen. Amara watched the footage, showed the officers approaching her property. She listened carefully. She watched the sequence again. Then again, her expression changed. Something wasn't matching the report she had been given. She leaned closer. Play that section again. The voice on the phone asked, What did you see? Amara didn't answer. She rewound the footage there. 3 seconds before the shot, Bruno wasn't charging, he was moving toward Amara. Amara froze, her eyes filled with tears again. That's not what they told me. The room became completely silent. She continued watching. Then she noticed something else. Officer Carter had stepped behind a parked vehicle moments before the shot. His body position was different from what appeared in the official account. Amara paused the footage. She whispered, Why would you leave that out? She picked up her phone. Get me the dispatch audio. Already transferring it, the file arrived. Amara listened. A dispatcher could be heard asking whether anyone was injured. Officer Miller answered quickly. Animal threat neutralized. Amara stopped the recording. Her face became completely still, neutralized. She repeated the word softly. Then she looked at Bruno's photograph. No, she shook her head. He wasn't a threat. She sat back for several seconds. She said nothing. Then another message appeared on her screen. A neighborhood resident had submitted a private video. Amara opened it. The footage came from across the street. It showed something the police report hadn't mentioned. A little girl had been standing near the sidewalk. When the officers arrived, and Bruno had been barking because he was trying to get between her and the approaching patrol car, Amara stared at the screen. Her breathing stopped for a moment. Now she understood this wasn't simply about a dog. A child had been nearby. A family had been terrified. And 2 officers had made a decision that could have ended with someone being killed. Amara slowly closed the laptop. She wasn't going to destroy the police department. She wasn't going to turn this into black versus white. Cops versus citizens, or one angry woman versus an entire system. She was going to force everyone in that room to remember. The real purpose of a badge: protect, serve, de-escalate, and when something goes wrong, have the courage to admit it. She picked up the phone again. Commander Amara looked at the photograph of Bruno one last time. Now activate the team. There was a pause. All of them. Amara's voice remained calm. All of them outside another vehicle slowly stopped across the street. Then another and another. Amara walked toward the window, unaware that the officers, who had dismissed her as just another angry woman, were about to discover that the quiet black woman they had underestimated was the one person in America with the authority, discipline, and determination to make the truth impossible to ignore. The first black SUV stopped outside the police station at 6:17 in the morning. Then another pulled in. Then a third. Nobody inside the station understood why. Officer Miller was standing near the front desk with a cup of coffee in his hand when he looked through the glass doors and suddenly stopped. Men and women in dark tactical clothing stepped out of the vehicles. They weren't rushing, they weren't shouting. They simply moved with the quiet confidence of people who knew exactly why they were there. Miller slowly lowered his coffee. "What is this?" Officer Carter walked toward the window. "I don't know." Then the station doors opened. Commander Amara Hayes walked inside. The grey hoodie was gone. She wore a dark command uniform, perfectly pressed, with her military insignia visible beneath the fluorescent lights. Her posture was straight. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried the grief of the woman who had buried her dog. Only hours earlier, the room became silent. One young officer whispered, "That's Commander Hayes." Carter turned. "What, Commander Hayes?" The young officer swallowed the delta. Commander Carter's face changed. Miller looked at Amara again. Suddenly the woman they had treated as an emotional civilian didn't look ordinary anymore. But Amara didn't enter the station to intimidate them. She entered to ask questions. She walked directly toward the desk. "Good morning." Nobody answered. She placed a folder on the counter. "I want the complete incident report." Miller cleared his throat. "Commander, we're already conducting an internal review." Amara nodded. "Good." She opened the folder. "Then you won't have a problem giving me the evidence." Carter stepped forward. "This is a local police matter." Amara looked at him, then investigated properly. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I am not here because I'm a black woman who lost her dog." She paused. "I am here because 2 officers made a decision that could have cost a life, and I want to know whether that decision was justified." The words landed heavily. Miller looked down. Amara continued, "I also want to make something very clear. I respect police officers." She looked around the room. "Some of the bravest people I've ever met wear a badge." Several officers looked up, but respect does not mean blind loyalty. Her voice became firmer. When an officer makes a mistake, the badge should not become a shield against accountability. Nobody interrupted her. That badge should become a reminder of responsibility. A senior officer finally stepped forward. "Commander Hayes, what exactly are you asking for?" "Everything." She pointed toward the evidence room. Body camera footage, dispatch audio, witness statements, weapon logs, training records, everything. The senior officer nodded. "We'll cooperate." Amara looked at him. "That's all I've ever wanted." Then Miller spoke. "Commander." Amara turned. "I want to apologize." Carter looked at him in surprise. Miller continued. "I don't know if that changes anything." Amara stared at him for several seconds. "No, it doesn't bring Bruno back." Miller lowered his eyes. "But it matters." Amara said. He looked up. "Because accountability begins when someone has enough courage to say, 'I was wrong.'" The station became quiet again. Amara took a breath. "And that's the lesson I want everyone watching this to remember." She looked toward the officers. "Good cops don't protect bad decisions." She looked toward the citizens, and good citizens don't condemn every officer because of the actions of a few. She stepped closer to the counter. Both sides need courage. The young officer who had recognized her earlier finally spoke. "Commander, what happens now?" Amara looked at him now. She picked up the folder. "Now we find the truth." She turned toward the exit, but before leaving she stopped. And when we find it, nobody gets special treatment. She looked back at the officers, not because they're wearing a badge. Then she placed a hand over her heart, and not because I'm wearing a uniform. Outside, the morning sun began breaking through the clouds. For the first time since Bruno's death, Amara allowed herself to breathe. She knew justice wouldn't erase the pain. Nothing could, but perhaps something good could still come from something terrible. Maybe Bruno's death could remind people that police officers are human beings who carry enormous responsibility. Maybe it could remind black women that being powerful doesn't require becoming cruel. And maybe it could remind every person watching that demanding justice and respecting law enforcement don't have to be enemies. Amara walked toward the waiting SUVs. Behind her, Officer Miller remained standing in the doorway. He looked down at his badge. Then he quietly said, "We have to do better." And that was where the real reckoning began, not with revenge, but with accountability. If this story made you stop and think, don't just watch silently. Tell us in the comments, was Amara right to demand accountability? And what would you have done in her position? And if you believe good police officers deserve respect, well, misconduct must still be confronted. Share this story with someone who believes in justice. For more powerful stories about justice, courage cops, black women accountability, and unexpected twists, subscribe to The Justice Verdict.